Mexico today and tomorrow, that was the last bit of it, right?
Yeah.
That was the part with the fucking flying. Oh, yeah, that was fucking atrocious.
That one looked...
Like, none of it was nearly as bad as the last bit.
No. Visually, doing the little PS2 cinematic style animation. Yeah, but in terms of the storytelling, the last one projects a future, and Mexican futurism, which, as far as I can tell, will be indistinguishable from the Aztec Empire. Because the Aztec Empire seemed like a great place to live.
It did.
It's just like, there's no substance at all. It's very UFC in that...
It is very UFC.
In that there's never a single person named. It is in no way about the people behind these events. It's just about the brand. And in this case, the brand is Mexico.
Yep. It is it's like a really long Cuervo tequila advert.
Yes.
Like, this would normally be like 30 seconds long, and at the end of it, it would be like, drink tequila. And you'd be like, sure.
Cuervo, live Mexicanly. Drink responsibly.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But the graphics would be better.
Yeah, probably. And welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie.
Hello.
Wow, 2-syllable Phil. You know what that means, folks. We have some fantastic fights to talk about to you today, except for the first two that we're going to talk about, which will take up most of the show. But that's all right. UFC 306 just happened. A genre redefining visual experience in the Sphere, which I gathered early on in the commentary of this event, Phil. They were probably instructed by the people who own the venue to call it Sphere.
Yeah.
Which is...
I have also...
It sounds...
It is never going to happen.
No, exactly.
No one is ever going to call it Sphere.
Here we are in Sphere. That's not how English works. Nobody wants to say that. But a much hyped card in which they spared no expense except on the booking.
Yep.
And, I think the results, speak for themselves. The, videos were probably amazing just as a live experience, just to be surrounded by, colors and sounds in every direction. From the other side of the TV, it was different. For that much, I'm not even going to get into all the complaints I have about, how vacuous I thought the sort of production at this event was. I'll say simply, it was different from every other UFC show, which I liked. They had cool little costumes for the, ring girls, which is a thing I never even pay a moment's attention to, but not this time I did. It added a little flavor to the production. And as you pointed out, Phil, you could see the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, until they all fell asleep, really, I think, added to the atmosphere, of the earlier fights on this card. And that is one thing I've just been asking for. I don't think that cost $20 million just to light the crowd and let me see the venue within which the fighters are fighting.
Well, they don't do this because, obviously, historically they don't want to run the risk that, if you never show the crowd, then if you have a crowd where everyone has walked out, or indeed no one bought tickets in the first place, then that's not going to be suddenly highlighted, or people aren't going to suddenly notice why this particular event has a very darkly lit crowd.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I think that's why they don't do it. For the same reason that much of, they don't make any, major production they don't do any kind of production, anything really, is because they don't want people to be, they don't want people to expect things from them.
Mm-hmm. Just keep it smooth, same thing every time. Nothing to distinguish one show from another.
Everything must run like a well-oiled machine to ensure that everything will work out exactly as you want it, which is why we had this fight between someone from Arizona and someone from Georgia headlining Riyadh season UFC Noche. Smooth.
But you know what? I like the fact that it was different. It had an atmosphere, this event.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated that. Just the sheer novelty of it. I could use some more stuff like that. I still think fondly of the live musical walkouts they had for McGregor versus Chad Mendes.
Yeah.
That was a super cool thing. They never do that. They never did that again. That was really cool though. More stuff like that. I like it. Make it a spectacle.
Yeah, I think as many people, I think most notably, I think Smoogie on Twitter have said, any kind of negative pushback from this will mean that the UFC will simply never try anything different ever again.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't think it doesn't cost $20 million to just do something different. And that is more than anything what I appreciated about this. I didn't love the videos. I didn't think they really had anything going on, especially the last one, which everyone seemed to agree was really dumb looking. But, but I'll take, spend way less money and just have, the venue feel like a venue rather than a sort of void full of screaming and hooting people, otherwise dark room that the fighters are competing in. You can see the apex when they're at the apex. It's not big enough to darken it.
Yes, exactly.
To darken it. The ring lights, the octagon lights alone illuminate the rest of the room. Go to more small venues bigger than the apex. And those are some of the best fights, the best fight memories I have are fights where they're in some little venue at a casino or something. And there's 1,500 people there, and the energy is the fight for the troops cards. Everybody loves those, and a big part of it is because they have a really personal, unique atmosphere where there's a little space that's just crammed with super enthusiastic people. It's great. So more of that, and it'll be a lot cheaper than this. More bang for your buck. Anyway.
Yeah. Again, another thing that I've heard, which I find very plausible, is that this is the UFC shopping their own production capabilities.
Yeah. They reportedly had a bunch of big time investors at the event. Mm-hmm. Comped tickets, I'm sure.
If you become our broadcast partner, Netflix or Amazon or whoever it might be, you can still trust us to produce our own thing, because we will give you a PS2 cutscene of a lady flying through the air and then lighting things by spinning around.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the guy from Arizona and the guy from Georgia, not the American one, who headlined this Mexican-themed event. Merab Dvalishvili, Sean O'Malley, who was the defending champion. And, I said live after Shevchenko Grasso 3 ended, whatever happens next, it can't be worse than what we just saw. And I will confidently say that
was correct.
I was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really, wasn't a great fight. In terms of competitiveness and action, it wasn't even a particularly good fight. But it was interesting, and it was not as bad as the fight that came before it. So credit to you, Merab Dvalishvili, for being just a categorically more interesting type of wrestler than Valentina Shevchenko. What did you think of this fight overall, though? Change your perspective on either of the fighters?
A little bit. I mean, I thought found it slightly underwhelming in that it was less of the two true outcome fight than we kind of predicted it to be. Certainly that I predicted it to be. I was just like, if Merab gets to run his game, he's eventually just going to run Sean O'Malley over. And that wasn't true. Like, O'Malley's best round was pretty much undeniably actually the fifth, which is remarkably impressive in some ways.
Yeah.
But sort of part of that also seemed due to the fact that I don't really think either guy showcased their best game here.
No. I tend to agree. And I would say more so for Sean O'Malley, I gotta be honest.
Well, I think it's the other way. I think it's Merab. I think Merab was the one who had the easier, more consistent win on the table than the one he took and didn't. With Sean, I'm thinking that it might actually just be a categorical problem with who he is as a fighter. Because I think once again, because I mean, Cormier, I thought, had actually a good call with this fight. Is that just essentially that he was just like, O'Malley is backing away and not initiating enough. He is getting put up against the fence, and too much of his game was focused on essentially intercepting Merab perfectly when Merab came in. And I think in some ways, this story of like, the story of sort of interceptions and initiations is really like the story of this card, or at least the top three fights on this card. And, you know, looking back at some of Sean O'Malley's performances, he really does have these fights where he will not initiate on his opponent at all. If he's got serious aggression coming back his way, he will always just look to counter. Or even not serious aggression. If he will simply not initiate exchanges on his own terms. I think this is the flip side of being, you know, huge and actually having genuinely good footwork, is that it's become something that he's relied on to insulate him to the extent that he doesn't actually do much when people when people aren't initiating the exchanges for him.
I mean,
so like
it certainly adds further context, or they both add context to each other, I suppose, to his fight with Aljo.
Yeah, exactly.
This is not dissimilar from a lot of what he did there. It just worked. Because Aljo
just landed one giant counter that finished the fight, and clearly was just like, oh well, that's how you do it. Similarly, the Munoz fight, which wasn't going very well, because, again, Munoz just simply didn't give him anything to work with when he was attacking him. He simply just landed meaningless low kicks the whole time, but was actually racking up points.
Yep.
And O'Malley was being very grudgingly forced into having to actually do things.
Yeah, I mean, it was really I think in that sense, it kind of worked for Merab that it was a pretty, like, non-committal performance on the feet.
So yeah, I mean, I mentioned this on Twitter, right? Is that this is also a function of O'Malley's approach to wrestling, which is that, like, he's just going to try and sprawl and get out of the takedown and push off and get back up to his feet. And he doesn't really have any actual, like, offensive weapons to attack with in wrestling exchanges. He's certainly not going to, like, get top position, but he's also not going to go for a guillotine or sweep or whatever, like, in any particular meaningful way. And what this means is that, like, once Merab has got his hands on Sean O'Malley, the next 4 or 5 sequences which happen are free from Merab.
Yeah, for sure.
They have no risk involved. He's not going to get submitted. And so
he's not going to get beat up in the clinch if he stalls out there. And
yeah, exactly.
He's also going to be the one
he's just going to disengage. So it's just free offense.
Yeah.
So what that means is that like that intercepting layer becomes so valuable for Sean O'Malley.
Yes.
Because he needs to make all of Merab's free offense essentially null and void, either by hurting him or simply like doing enough damage to win the round. And like Merab also recognized that was the case. That first layer was so valuable that he didn't need to test it very much.
Yep.
Which gave us a fight with like surprising amounts of just empty nothing in it.
Yep.
Of just sparring range, sort of jumping in and out, because neither of them wanted to test that one specific layer. The reason why I criticize Merab more for this is because, you know, I mean, again, he won the fight quite easily. You can't criticize him for it too much. But it was a fight where O'Malley came back on him a little bit right at the end.
Yeah.
And hurt him a bit right towards the end. And it's a fight where if he'd broken through that layer more times, O'Malley absolutely would have been completely shattered by the end of that.
Yeah, incurred more immediate risk, but he would have shut O'Malley completely out of the fight. Yeah, I agree with that. I have my faults with the fifth round. I would say that that's not even more of the same from Merab. That is, in fact, Merab completely turning off the pressure. Because despite the fact that he was not committing much, it was like the Pedro Munoz fight in that he was positionally pressuring O'Malley most of the fight.
Yep.
He was trying to take space, and he was trying to get him moving backwards, and he was just trying to be there without actually being too much of a target. And he was working the legs a little bit from that range, like he was being annoying and applying pressure. And then in round 5, he completely turned that off, and that is what allowed O'Malley to nearly beat him, which I would consider a sort of classic MMA brain kind of turn. Like, MMA fighters, with very few exceptions, are not good enough to coast like that. In that way. Like in boxing, you can be so ahead in a fight that you just coast, sure. If you've got the good footwork, good control, you can make the guy chase you, and you just easily make him miss, and you're cutting angles and sticking and moving just enough to make him have to keep chasing you while keeping him at bay. Merab Dvalishvili does not have the footwork or the jab or the defense necessary to actually just go purely defensive and evasive. And that showed.
Also, MMA judging is really bad. And while he, had probably won the previous 4 rounds, wasn't really that many. There might have been one of them where you were just like, "Oh yeah, that was a really decisive." It's just like not that much happened in any of the rounds that he won.
The only big things that happened in round 3 were things that were good for O'Malley.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. That was the round where he landed that like step knee.
Yep.
And yeah, so and he had Dvalishvili got a 47-48 card for his 48-47 card for his troubles. Like he was 1 round away from losing this.
Yeah. That struck me as very MMA brained. Like, rather than continuing to dominate the fight, which has kept you very safe, including the entirety of the previous round, you're going to now decide to do something different because you don't have to do anything anymore. And you let the opponent back into the fight. Terrible decision-making there from Merab. But I think throughout the rest of the fight, the sort of mostly empty pressure really did the trick. It may not have against a better prepared Sean O'Malley, one who came in with, more ideas, one who came in prepared to like be satisfied with little victories, which that was just not in his approach at all. He was just almost every time he threw any punch, he was trying to take Merab's head off. But it did result in a kind of fight where, just like Aljo O'Malley, except that in this one O'Malley was the one whose nerve broke first. And repeatedly broke first. Merab was just comfortable being there, just doing a lot of not particularly much. And O'Malley could not resist, just like overthrowing on a right hand over and over. It was the right hand that he got taken down on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're absolutely right. The fact that O'Malley made the interception of Merab's wrestling attack the crux of his game here is a huge mistake. That's like a complete misunderstanding of how you need to win a fight like this. You cannot, I don't know. And I suppose there's some reinforcement because it worked against Aljo, but he was a lot more patient against Aljo, I think. And really just made Aljo make the big mistakes first.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like just Aljo just did less than Merab when it came to when it came to like pressure and just being happy with low kicks.
It's quite possible Aljo could win a rematch with O'Malley based on what we saw here with just a couple adjustments, right? If O'Malley were to take the same approach again. But yeah, just to have, like, this was always going to be a kind of matchup where O'Malley had to be kind of perfect, to win it. But to create such fine margins around such like a narrow slice of the fight in which you have to be absolutely perfect to win. You know what I mean? It's just like he just shot himself in the foot, I think, with his whole approach. Yeah. That's just, it's not gonna, you have to get lucky, really lucky to win the fight with that strategy. He didn't stack the deck in his favor at all. So what am I talking about? What could he have done differently? Well, surprise, surprise, he probably should have used his fucking jab. You know? He probably should have used his lead hand. He probably should have been jabbing Merab in the chest. Jabbing him in the stomach.
He was a little to start with, but which
to start,
leads me to the idea that this is simply in many ways who Sean O'Malley is.
Yeah, that he reverted.
That
back
he
to
had
a comfort
plans
zone.
And under stress, they immediately disintegrated.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that sense too. I caught that on my rewatch, because I was so taken with how he wasn't doing any jabbing at all at range. He wasn't doing anything to control the fight at range. And yeah, I definitely caught in the first 2-3 minutes of the fight, he is actually putting his jab out there and it's working. But it just collapses, and yeah, he totally reverts to this, time him perfectly or lose. Let's talk a little bit about Tim Welch, O'Malley's coach. This was more of a figure in this fight than I expected him to be. Tim Welch, O'Malley's, cool, badass, cigarette-smoking MMA coach who really thinks of himself as quite a character. At the very beginning of the fight, he was like yelling shit at Merab or something. And Merab, it really worked. Merab got really distracted and started mouthing off to him. But then like Tim Welch got in trouble. Which, Joe Rogan, who was all over the place with what he was feeling about Herb Dean during this fight, he was like really confused by that. To me, like, a referee, even if it's not in the rules, a referee saying, hey, don't talk shit to the other fighter, that's just normal.
Yeah.
I feel like any ref, if they notice that, would be within their rights to just say, hey, like, that's not how the game is played. Shut up. But then I found, I don't know, I do not feel that O'Malley was well prepared for this fight. And part of that feeling is from what I saw in the corner from Tim Welch, which was that he was also coaching O'Malley into finding perfect intercepting strikes does make me think that was a focus of their training.
Mm-hmm.
And then after round 4, did you hear what Tim Welch said to Sean O'Malley?
No.
It was worse than something.
Oh, what? Oh yeah, it was. I do remember. It was something really weird. It's like it's almost over.
It's almost over.
Almost out of there. Or
yeah.
Yeah.
We're almost done. Bro, that is not what your fighter needs to hear when he's about to lose his title. That is terrible cornering. That is worse than Henry. Henry Hooft was accidentally defeating his fighter psychologically when he said, don't give up, thereby putting the idea of giving up in their minds. But we're almost done here. Like, he was just like baby talking him. Like, that is not, where's Leon Edwards' coach when you need him? You need to get him fired up. You should be like, I don't know. And that was just the thing, is like, Merab breaks people. It happens. But the speed with which O'Malley was broken in this fight was actually surprising to me. Like, that first round, he was out there actually like filling the space, gaining time on Merab, setting things up, finding some control, some initiative. And he got taken down, and he fought the first takedown really hard. I was like, okay, this is like, it's like a Volkanovski Makhachev 1. Like, obviously you think one guy has the wrestling advantage, but then you see how the other one responds to the first successful takedown. You're like, well, if he can keep doing that, that might kind of change the parameters here. But that was the only takedown he fought like that. Literally, like, the next one in round 2, he just played full guard. What was he prepared to do by his coaches, if that was how quickly it fell apart? Is that all on Sean O'Malley? I'm not saying it's not at all who he is, but what's the training like to sort of prepare around that? Was Tim Welch surprised? If so, then like what did the wrestling training look like in this camp? Where were the rounds that like Volk was doing to prepare for Islam, where he was just like 2 hard rounds, nonstop takedown defense? Okay, bring in a fresh wrestling partner, and you got to go 2 more rounds, and then bring in another fresh partner, and you got to do 2 more. We're trying to instill this relentless determination to get back to your feet all throughout the training camp. I can't imagine they did anything like that based on how O'Malley responded to literally the first 2 takedowns of the fight. He didn't take much to break him.
The approach to both, the wrestling and the striking just absolutely disintegrated very, very quickly into this fight.
Very quickly. It's like, what did you expect? You knew you were fighting Merab. This isn't even the most intense version of Merab. What did you expect?
Yeah. I mean, again, so we spoke a bit about, off stream, we spoke a bit about, like, how Jan had been talking about this fight, and he was like, I think Sean O'Malley's going to win.
Right.
And this was...
The guy I beat, the guy I kind of beat is going to win.
Yeah, because I think he fought Merab, and then after that, he was just, he just thought to himself, even if he didn't admit it to himself, he was just like, you know what, I'm just not beating this guy.
Yeah. In fact, I'm not even going to think about him ever again.
Yeah, I just did not have an answer to this. I have to visualize a way back to the title, and it is not through Merab Dvalishvili.
Yeah.
But that also, like, I also thought that came through a little bit with Sean O'Malley himself, when he was like, people are going to be surprised, I'm going to make this look easy. And yeah, that was one of my major takeaways before the fight, was like,
you
kind of have to make it look easy.
Yeah,
if you don't make it look easy, you're probably losing this fight.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, he can't think that fully. In his head, he can't go in there thinking like, this is going to be easy. That's how you break immediately, when it turns out not to be easy. Like, he was not psychologically or tactically prepared for how hard this fight was going to be, barring an immediate knockout win. And that's to me is just really bad preparation.
I did like I thought he did as well as, I thought his 5th round was to be honest, very Leon Edwards 5th round-esque.
Sure.
In that he got as aggressive as he can be, which is, I think, not actually very, and managed to salvage like a single moment of dynamic offense out of it.
Yep.
It wasn't like Leon in that managed to completely win the fight for him, but it was also something where, like, looking at it, I was reminded again, like, how underrated front kicks are.
Oh, yeah.
In general, but also, like, just as a counter wrestling thing.
Totally.
Approach. Like,
those actually worked for him throughout the fight. They were some of his most effective strikes with those front kicks to the body.
Mm-hmm. And once he started, like, spamming it a little bit more, it suddenly just really worked. And so I was reminded of both, like, Rory McDonald versus Damian Maia, where you realize it's actually quite difficult to, you can catch a round kick and convert that into a takedown.
Even if it
lands.
It's
quite difficult to... Yeah. It's actually quite difficult to do that against a front kick because you have to sweep and parry it and push them off balance, which is generally quite hard.
And it is sort of the jab or, in some trajectories, the uppercut of kicks, both of which are much trickier strikes to defend than hooks.
Mm-hmm.
They just are.
And yeah, you just can't run through it. Admittedly, again, sometimes if someone runs straight at you as your front kick, you will just be thrown back on your ass. But again, this is not a takedown. You're getting thrown backwards, but you can then stand up. It's not it's not the person has locked their feet.
Right.
And again, they will also have had to literally like run through your kick like it's a fucking boar spear to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I thought that was cool. That was something that he could potentially do in a rematch, but he's probably never going to rematch Merab. I don't know. I don't think people would want to see this fight again. And also, he's obviously, being Sean O'Malley, he's got a horrible injury and he needs to be doing surgery for the next 10 months or whatever it is.
Did he come out and say he had some injury?
Yeah, I think it's his hip this time. It was his shoulder last time, I think.
God, he just has the most old man injuries. His hip?
Yeah.
You're like 29 years old, dude. That's not good.
I've said it many times, but it's a really bad sign.
Yeah. He's going to be like 35 and have
pick up in and outside fight injuries all the time. It means your time at the top is going to be short.
Yeah. He's going to be 35 with like a bad back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I thought Merab's approach could have, I suppose, been better, but it was simply not necessary, actually, to break Sean O'Malley for him to do more than he did. I thought really the big mistake in Merab's approach was how he went about that 5th round. That he himself then started to sort of misunderstand the assignment and actually let O'Malley back into the fight when it would have been really easy to just keep him. Like, even if O'Malley came into that round fired up, which I don't know how he would, given that his coach was like, shh, it's okay, Sean, it's okay. It's almost over. A little bit of resistance from Merab, it would have set him right back to square one.
Yep.
Hit a takedown, for fuck's sake. It's been working. I don't know. But yeah, a pretty lackluster fight, it has to be said. But I'm certainly not unhappy to have Merab as the champion in this division. There's a ton of fun matchups. A ton of people he has
also, he's been clearly the best bantamweight for like a while.
He's just been winning the most
no one expected him to thrash Jan the way he did. And I am very excited to see the stylistic matchup between, I mean, if he fights the winner of who's Figueiredo fighting? Or is he fighting anyone?
I don't remember, but they were talking about, they were already talking at the event about Merab fighting Umar.
Yeah. So Figueiredo would be very fun. Again, this would be a different kind of fight than O'Malley, because this would be someone who would actually be attacking takedowns in a genuinely dangerous way.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, even to Jan.
Yeah.
Because Jan's danger is that he gets top position on you himself. And trying to do that against Merab was broadly a fool's errand, but Figueiredo is like a genuinely dangerous submission threat. So that would be super fun. But obviously, like, the Umar fight is incredibly tantalizing, because Umar looks like, well, as we said before, he looks like the fucking truth. He looks exactly what you would want to fight someone like Merab.
Right. Here's a guy who seems perfectly capable of handling the wrestling, of actually being offensively potent there himself. Again, like Volkanovski-Makhachev, the best thing about that fight was that Volkanovski was actually effective at, like, being aggressive in the wrestling and grappling departments. That really changed the whole tone of that fight. So that's a great thing to have. I think of, like, Ricky Simone, his fight with Merab. There's just somebody who's just a strong, dynamic wrestler, and he gave Merab a hell of a fight. With the addition of the fact that Umar is also just a really solid range boxer and kicker as well. Somebody who, it seems, will be much more diligent in just taking a ton of small victories on Merab at that range, where he is still the most hittable, the most vulnerable. So yeah, I would very much like to see. I was a little discouraged by the fact that the Sphere crowd, when Umar showed up, there wasn't like a peep. None of these people knew who he was.
Yeah.
I almost feel like if they did Davison,
so many of them were just rich.
Exactly. Yeah. They're
not just rich people there for the Instagram.
They aren't really fight fans in any particular way. I feel like it would be sensible to give Umar one more fight, perhaps. And to first give Merab, like Figueiredo or something, a fight where he'd be reasonably confident he's just going to keep the title, but it's still interesting. A little more seasoning for Umar, because I think he looks like he has the makings of potentially a really great MMA champion. But even if they do that right away, it's a very tantalizing fight, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think for someone like Umar, you can just put him in. To be honest, like, he beat Corey Sandhagen. There's no one, you can't really do much better than that. I think it's one of those things where it's like, no one really remembers that John Jones beat Ryan Bader, a very nascent Ryan Bader, to get his title shot.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that
Bader,
was
Matt Shevchenko.
I think it was Bader just before he got his shot. But and then a whole bunch of people were like, he's never fought anyone.
Right.
He's never fought anyone good. What's he doing here? And
he just eradicates.
You've got to be like, come on, man. Just look at him. Just look at him.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just look at Umar Nurmagomedov. This man is championship quality.
Umar passes every eyeball test you could muster, for sure. You didn't even do what you promised you would do, Phil, which is rake me over the coals.
Oh yeah,
for picking Sean.
Yeah,
I will say,
but as I said, it was just one of those fights where it would look super obvious once the fight was over, but it wasn't actually that obvious beforehand.
Yeah, I did have
that fifth round that just like a difference in approach, being more like that, being more like McGregor, more of a McGregor-Mendez approach. If O'Malley had just come out and just been spamming the front kicks to the body from the start and taking the, because he could still get up from the takedowns, one of the most damning things. It often wasn't just like a sealed round. Especially because he was being helped out there by fucking Herb Dean, who was...
Oh my God, we didn't even talk about that. Let's talk about that before we end the segment. Jesus Christ.
We have to, don't we? I mean, what? How are they still booking Herb Dean for things?
I don't know. Herb Dean, this was one of those fights. The thing with Herb Dean, this is what people, I feel like, rarely hit. What is the real problem with Herb Dean? And they'll point to one.
There is no consistency.
That is it. He is inconsistent.
But he is the fucking magic 8-ball of referees.
That is it. That is the problem. Because this was one of those fights where he got like all up on his high horse early because he had to like deal with Tim Welch. And then he very correctly called out and gave a hard warning for a glove grab from Sean O'Malley. I'm like, okay, great call, Herb. That should be, he noticed it before Rob wasn't even going to complain, and he noticed it. So good eye. But he was like in I'm the boss mode on this night. 90% of Herb fights, he's like barely awake. He's like not there. But this one, he got spurred into boss mode right at the beginning. And then he was way too involved in the fight after that. That is one of my least favorite things a referee can possibly do, is to make themselves a story of the fight when it's not necessary. If there's some fouls happening and you what are you going to do but get involved? At that point, get involved, yes. But he was, this was just like, wasn't it Herb who was calling that fight with Derek something? Why am I forgetting his name? Featherweight?
I can't remember. Who you're referring to.
I will think of it in a moment. It was another fight where there was somebody who was being evasive. Except in that case, he was warning the guy who was trying to pressure him to work more.
Oh, yeah.
You remember what I'm talking about, right? It was like the Swedish kickboxer guy.
Wasn't it, what's his face?
Versus
sounds like a bounty hunter.
MMA Lab guy.
Clinch grinds people.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's his name? Why am I blanking on it? MMA Lab fighters. This is great podcasting, by the way. This is really good. When the two hosts are just being old.
On the edge of their seats.
Just being old men who can't think of a name.
Remember this guy?
Drakkar Klose.
Against David Tamer.
Drakkar Klose, David Tamer. That was, I think, a Herb Dean fight, if I'm not mistaken. And that was another one where Herb was in active mode. He had an extra cup of coffee before the fight or something. Except that in that case, it was Drakkar Klose being passive, which Merab was doing here, and he was warning David Tamer to work when he was trying to pressure
beat his ass harder.
He was trying to pressure him and create engagements. This time, he was warning Merab to work when I don't think it was a good decision, but a perfectly legitimate strategic decision to try to coast in the 5th round. It's on Sean.
It was because like Drakkar Klose was completely running away, was backing up the entire time and just being like, doing the whole like, come on, pussy, fight.
Yeah.
Whilst backing up and waiting for.
And Herb responded to him complaining.
And then Herb was like, yeah, go on, pussy, get it.
He's just so like impressionable, like. Who knows? That's the problem with Herb Dean. Who knows what kind of mode he's going to be in on any given night? And that is not the kind of guy you need in your main events. Get Herzog in there. Get Mark Goddard in there.
Get almost anyone. Get almost anyone else in there.
Get Keith Peterson in there. Keith Peterson's a fine ref. Like, come on.
Uh-huh.
And the speed with which Joe Rogan, with no, I'm sure, reflection at all, went from, well, Herb Dean's the best. Herb Dean's the best in the game. He's the best ref there is. To then spending the entirety of the 5th round saying, what the fuck is Herb talking about? Was staggering.
Yeah. It's the sort of plasticity of Joe's beliefs and, because he always just like responds to what's in front of him.
Yeah.
And takes on that narrative, but he also knows that Herb Dean is the best referee.
Yeah, because next time he sees Herb in a fight, he's going to say it again. Yeah, Herb Dean's the gold standard. He just watched a fight where he did a terrible job, but he's still going to come back and be like, well, Herb Dean's the best. Anyway, yeah, an unfortunate, that really like soured the fight more than it already had been. The fact that Herb Dean insisted on being involved in a completely unnecessary way. You're not helping.
Yeah. It's like he's going for a sticker book and just like all the ways that a ref can be bad.
He's got a full fucking collection at this point. Retire, put it up and frame it,
at this point,
put it on the wall.
Early stoppages, late stoppages, too involved, not involved. Like, he must have been really proud when he finally got his badge for like, tell the guy who's moving forward to be more aggressive.
Yeah. He's got, imagine how many badges he has for sort of almost stopping a fight and then changing your mind.
Yeah.
He's got those in every color.
It's his signature.
It really is. Anyway, Herb Dean is an incredibly inconsistent referee. If you were listening to Joe Rogan up to this point, and this is your first encounter with being perplexed, you know, like now that Joe's noticed it, you have permission to notice it too, that Herb Dean actually sucks. Keep that in mind when you see him reffing future main events, which he is constantly getting UFC main events. Because this is who Herb Dean is as a ref. Inconsistent. All right. Let's close out the segment there then. A long one, but hey. We got a short one coming up next. Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso after the break.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Of course, next up on the docket is the triumphant return. Cue sad, wet fart sounding trumpets of Valentina Shevchenko to the women's flyweight throne. The culmination of a trilogy, which I gotta say, is just backwards. It's just completely backwards, this trilogy. It doesn't make any sense. Except in the sense that all the fights were close, and we did sort of say that, like, she's just gonna get one. Except this one wasn't even close. And it feels like, like, it's backwards, right? This is what we expected to happen when they first fought.
Yep.
It's like Valentina's just going to go in there. She hates the striking, but that doesn't matter because Grasso has bad takedown defense, and she's just going to go in there and hold her down and do nothing on top for 5 rounds. And that's what you expected to happen in the first fight. And then it's like the second fight, and it's like, well, Valentina's wrestling is still very effective, but she's starting to show her age. Grasso is just like catching her in big moments and is like, come in with this renewed confidence. And then the third fight is like Grasso actually does a pretty good job. And it's like a pretty solid performance. Still a tough fight, but she gets the finish. That would make sense chronologically, given how people age. But instead, we have a series in which Alexa Grasso has never come close to doing as well as she did in the very first fight they had. And we've come back around to the point where she's just losing a fight that Valentina has won against countless other faceless women's flyweight fighters.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what this made me think of?
Killing yourself?
This made me another one of the things that has come around recently, which has made me think people do, in fact, I realise this is a slight blasphemy, people do underrate John Jones's MMA career a bit at this point. The nerds that we hang around with, obviously not the wider.
Well, yeah, there's clearly a reaction.
A
reaction to all of the Jones's uncontested pound-for-pound GOAT propaganda that now a bunch of people are like, actually, he sucks. But yeah, he doesn't suck.
Yeah. But there is something still very impressive in just lining up and knocking down people who who are just like fine and just seem that way. And, they don't add that much to your resume after the fact.
Yeah, but you're beating them the way you should beat them.
And people forget about them. Because what actually happens a lot of the time is that sometimes people will just lose fights to opponents like this. They will just drop a fight to someone that they just never should because they just don't turn up on that day or something weird happens. And admittedly, this came close to happening to Jones for like weird reasons every now and again, like his toe breaking against Chael Sonnen and so on and so forth. But like Alexa Grasso, and this has been something I've not been able to shake this feeling, even when she was the champion, would have been an absolute also-ran takedown, an absolute also-ran title defense.
Yes.
And no one would have given a second thought to if she hadn't somehow won that first fight with a sort of come from behind submission and also won the second one whilst somehow looking even worse.
Yeah. Well, she didn't win it. It was a draw.
Yeah, sorry.
She just retained her title.
Yeah. So,
if this had happened, and it seems, maybe it couldn't have, because that was Grasso's. She was locked in for that first fight. She really was. Mm-hmm. She was super motivated. She was really consistent in her approach. Even when things started to go sideways, she was still very solid and consistent strategically in that fight. But yeah, if this, which was clearly always possible, if this had happened, absolutely she would have just been another one on Valentina's record.
So, the question is, why is it backwards? And I think we have to praise the incredible evolution of Valentina Shevchenko for this one. As to why these fights look so weird. Because she has learned core elements of MMA throughout this trilogy. And that it's looked horrific is sort of beside the point. But I think, the first fight is essentially this is Valentina Shevchenko doing Valentina Shevchenko things. She stands at the edge of her effective countering range, dares you to come into it, and if you don't step in far enough, she jumps back out, and if you step in too far, she will clinch and throw you, and sometimes she will actually counter you for throwing, and she will try and lower the pace to something glacial unless she's sat on top of you. This is how she fights. And the Grasso fight really illustrated something for me, which is another thing that I was kind of thinking about, which is that sometimes you see a fight between two people and it makes you really reassess how a fight with someone else would have gone that you were otherwise confident in.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, a recent example of this would be watching Bilal Muhammad against Leon Edwards. I was like, man, Leon was lucky that he did not have to fight Shevchenko. Because just...
Oh, Rachmanov,
yes. Because pure, consistent transitional offense. I would have thought, Shavkat's very hittable, Leon will be able to line up shots on him and so on. Nowadays, if I think about that fight, I'm just like, sure, he is hittable, it won't matter. He would jump on Leon and stay on him forever.
Yeah.
And then he would just beat his ass in a similar way to the way that Bilal did, but much, much worse. That Bilal fight changed my opinions on how, Shavkat versus Leon would have gone if it had ever happened. And similarly, the first Alexa Grasso fight made me think that, Rose Namajunas saying, sure, I'd like to go up and fight Valentina Shevchenko, was not actually nearly as stupid as I thought it was at the time.
Yeah.
Because, admittedly, I'd probably still pick Valentina to overpower her, but especially pre-Alexa Grasso Valentina would have fed into one of the worst ways to fight Rose Namajunas, which is to wait on her.
Yes.
If you do that, then Rose will simply leap across range very, very quickly and disguise her strikes and hit you very, very hard.
Yep.
And this might have actually worked super well against Valentina Shevchenko, because that was how Alexa Grasso was essentially making things work in the first fight.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when they were just sort of chilling at range, Grasso could burst across space and hit Shevchenko, with something crafty or fast enough that she couldn't quite react to it. And that jumping backwards out of range or just countering it straight up was not high percentage enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the second fight, we saw Shevchenko learn something major, which is initiating offense within the slice of range that she likes to occupy. So she started actually jabbing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third fight, we saw Shevchenko add the final piece to her masterwork, which is that she found a way of closing distance herself. And this absolutely exploded Grasso's entire game plan.
What was Grasso's game plan? That's my question.
I mean, it was the same thing. It was to hang out at range, and then nothing would happen, and occasionally she could jump at Valentina and punch her twice. But then, she was like, what? She's jumping at me? And then falling over. And that was the fight.
She didn't really jump at her much, though. She mostly countered Grasso.
She didn't have to, because, again, Grasso was completely unprepared for it.
I mean, I know you're being slightly facetious here, but, this was such a terrible performance from Alexa Grasso. I mean, that to me is the main thing I took away from the main event and co-main event of this card. What were these?
This as a sensational evolution of Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah, sure you did.
Late in her career, she's adding entire elements of MMA to it. Like, moving forward.
Yeah, sometimes.
And punching while standing still. That's 2 consecutive fights where she's added one of those things each.
I will say...
How many people have you seen add that much to their MMA career that late into it?
I will say, she did actually initiate a lot of the takedowns. In a very, in the men's divisions, this has been happening since 2002, where she would, jab or hook and then shoot. It absolutely destroyed Grasso, which is hysterical. But also,
as a friend of the show, Ryan Wagner said, she developed a single takedown setup, leaping lead hook to double leg.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was it.
And it worked the whole fight.
She was just what if I jump across space? And you could just see Grasso just being like, what?
Yeah.
You do what now?
But just on the level
it's like being someone who went dynamite fishing, and then suddenly the fish are just leaping out of the water and straight into your face. This person is using an entirely different mode of attack than the one you expected.
Yeah.
Moving forwards.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Not very often. It wouldn't take that much for for it to shock you if you were fishing and just a fish just leaped out of the water directly into your face. You'd still be pretty
200
shaken up.
200-pound arowana leaps out of the water and smacks you in the dome with its tail, for sure. It would change how you felt about your fishing trip. But I gotta double down and say that I felt the main theme of these 2 fights was champions doing a horrible job preparing for their opponents. I mean, we already said Grasso looked bad in the second fight. and was very lucky in many ways not to lose it just because she found the big moments. But what was she doing in the training camp is a question I keep asking. Like, I was joking and she would like go back to her corner and the cornerman would be like, have you considered learning to wrestle? Like, what were you training? Based on what happened in the second fight and all the times she got taken down, what was the training for this? What could it have possibly been?
Mm-hmm.
She was, if anything, worse prepared than she was in the second fight. What is happening in these training camps that is even a possibility? How do you shit the bed that bad? That after 2 fights with Valentina, you basically lose the fight you probably should have lost in a normal timeline. The first time, like, yes, I'll grant you, Valentina actually set up takedowns. This was a more proactive wrestling performance than we've probably ever seen from her. But like Grasso, setting aside the setup and everything, she had no ability to deal with the possibility of a shot. How is that possible after fighting Valentina twice, especially after that second fight? How do you come into a fight that poorly prepared?
Yeah. I mean, my main takeaway, like, it was mostly my main takeaway after, like, their second fight was just that Alexa Grasso just isn't that good.
Yeah,
it was a weird thing, confluence of circumstances that had got her to the belt in the first place.
For sure, but like, I gotta shit on the coaches sometimes. What are you preparing your fighters for if this is what they look like? She could be not that good.
Isn't it her uncle?
That would make sense, I suppose. That would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
What was your wrestling training like for this fight? You didn't look like she worked on it at all. And it nearly lost her.
They won the last fight.
Well, they didn't.
But she got her back.
That's what I mean. She didn't.
In
she
the
was
last fight,
this
and then
close.
she submitted her in the other one.
She was this close to losing her title in the last fight. A lot of people thought Valentina should have won that fight. And I think they're crazy to feel so strongly about it, but
She should have trained more jiu-jitsu. Then she would have been able to submit Valentina.
Yeah, imagine how many more times Joe Rogan would have said, "Ooh, that's tight," on a submission that was completely not working from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she did a fucking guillotine in round 4, Phil. She's like, I know. I'll do a submission that if it doesn't work, I'm going to be losing exactly the same way as I've been losing the entire fight up to this point. Horribly unprepared. It's shocking. It's scandalous that you can be coaches to a champion and this is what your fighter looks like. What are you doing?
It's literally the only area of the fight where they've been consistently struggling the entire time.
Right.
Throughout the now, what is it? 75 minutes that they've been fighting each other, slightly less, obviously, because she finished her last
70 plus minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they haven't improved at it, but more than that, they've gotten out-adapted by one of the most
one-size-fits-all. Yes.
Like, yeah, one-size-fits-all, like, stubborn, boring fighters to ever do it.
Yeah.
You have been out-adapted by Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah. You forced Valentina to adjust, a thing which should automatically defeat her, because she hates it. She hates having to change the way she fights. And you forced her to do that.
So poisonous to you that she utterly crushed
And she just got better and better due to the tiny adjustments you forced her to make. To a point where you just...
And then I'll tell you, just again, entire areas of
well,
MMA, Connor.
In that sense, it's a paradigm shift, but materially, it's one new thing per fight, really, from Valentina.
Standing your ground and throwing and moving forward are, in fact, they contain multitudes.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, amazing job, Valentina Shevchenko, proving why she is a champion for the ages.
I mean, I thank God.
I can't wait to see her fight Manon Fiorot, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, thank God we have Manon Fiorot and Natalia Silva on the come up in this division, because I think these are two women which actually stand a pretty good chance of beating Valentina.
Mm-hmm.
Grasso just shit the bed spectacularly. It is really astounding to me how you can go through both of those first two fights and show up looking like this. It's like you just weren't thinking at all. You were not intellectually engaged with the struggle between you and this opponent in any real way. It's crazy. What are you doing? You're just doing strength and conditioning. You're just doing rolling and is it even a fight camp at that point? There's no element of strategy in it. It's crazy. Last thing I want to say before we move on from this travesty is I do want to highlight something I know we've talked about before, but it continues to mystify me. The differing fan response between this and the main event.
Hmm?
This was far and away a worse fight than the main event. No question. It was...
Yeah. Also, the differing ref response.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Valentina doesn't get warned for just sitting on top, doing nothing for the vast majority of this fight. Doing nothing. To be fair, I don't think a referee should necessarily feel beholden to warn a fighter doing what Valentina's doing. It's Grasso's fucking fault that she's just getting taken down easily and can't make anything happen. So fair enough. At least Valentina's put herself in the position where doing nothing will win the fight. But the fan response blows my mind. What really got me was, and I guess this is just normal, but there was that guillotine attempt, which I was just dismissing the moment it started. I think I said on Twitter, yeah, do a guillotine. That'll fix it. You're going to win the fight now. Great job, Alexa. And the fact that they're there, it's clearly not going to get finished for, a good 30 seconds before the grip is broken. And then Valentina breaks the grip and the crowd explodes in cheers. And, on some level, that'll happen in any fight. Somebody gets trapped in a submission and escapes. That usually gets a pop. But knowing that success for Valentina, knowing very well by this point in the fight what that means, and people are just MMA fans are they're white knights, apparently. That's the impression I'm getting. They're weirdly chivalrous and forgiving of, you would expect MMA fans to be horrible to women, and many of them are, but it's the Holly Holm thing all over again. How does Valentina hang on to this level of popularity and admiration from these bozos who will shit on a, lackluster but fine fight like Dvalishvili O'Malley? There's a ton of people out there saying that was a worse fight to watch than this one.
That's completely insane.
And I have to conclude it's simply because they're horny for Valentina Shevchenko. I can think of no other explanation. They're horny for her in a
also getting a massive pop for the blanketing wrestler popping out of the submission proves both that point and also the point that there were very few actual Mexicans in the UFC Noche sphere thing, because it's the event for broad brush multi-ethnic coalition of extremely rich people.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just to be reminded repeatedly when somebody like Valentina or Holly Holm fights, how many MMA fans are cap doffing, yes, my lady, is this gentleman bothering you types?
Yep.
Is embarrassing. You can talk shit about a woman, guys. It's okay. She's not going to kiss you anyway. So If the fight sucks, you can call it out. It's all right. It just surprises me. MMA fans, I think of this as like knuckle dragging apes. And yet, in this respect, they're like, oh, well, a good show, ma'am. I wouldn't want to say anything rude to a woman. It's bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, but it's not even just that. It's the fact that they're willing to genuinely, like, show appreciation. Like fights like Holly Holm, Raquel Pennington 2, which is...
They love it!
And all this, which are both like, genuinely horrifically bad.
Dreadful fights, yeah. It's I'm starting to realize the only reason anyone booed during Namajunas Esparza is because Rose cut her hair. And
that is a good point.
And MMA fans
thought of that.
Can't tell the difference between men and women unless one has long hair and the other doesn't. That's the only reason that they booed there, is because they don't think Rose is hot anymore. I don't know.
Damn, you are... That sounds very, very true.
They wouldn't have been able to tell it was a bad fight if she had a girlish hair. That's what I'm realizing.
Yeah. Maybe just if she was blonde.
She is blonde. Well, she's sort of dirty. She's sort of dirty blonde, I guess. She had light brown hair. It was blondish.
It's been a while.
Yeah, she was blondish. I mean, she's Lithuanian. They must have some blondes up there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, well, this fight was fucking awful. It was soul crushing. It literally ruined the rest of the event for me. I was in a terrible mood after this. I just was. Yeah. So.
It's because the whole thing has told us on a story. It's that, it told the story of, like, Shevchenko being able to just sort of hold an iron grip over a division with a really basic game. And then the Grasso wins, the first Grasso win sort of indicated that grip was being broken and there would be like a new meta and new things to think about in the division.
Yeah.
And then everything after that has simply reinforced the fact that division was not like becoming better than we thought it was. It was in fact even worse than we suspected.
Back to square one.
Valentina was not the face of, like, stoic, boring, conservatism in this division. All this time, she was the face of adaptability.
That's right. The bleeding edge.
And that's the most depressing ending of all.
It's soul crushing to realize that. Fucking hell. All right. Let's take another break on that note. When we come back, Lopes Ortega, we had a fight of the year contender and certainly I think a round of the year front runner between Esteban Ribovic and Daniel Zellhuber, and we may pick up a couple of the scraps from the undercard as well after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about this featherweight fight. It did happen. Nobody got injured, which is to say Brian Ortega didn't get injured. Diego Lopes versus Brian Ortega. We had Simon talking about this last week. And I tried to tell him that Brian Ortega was old, Phil. You know, I really tried to tell him. That's the pick that we made, right? We were like, well, Brian Ortega's too old. He's not going to win.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, but
that would have been completely dismissive of
he wouldn't listen.
Lopez's chances to win this one.
Yeah. So he wouldn't listen. So, you know, I did actually sort of, because you didn't rake me over the coals, for picking Sean O'Malley. I did want to bring up that I sort of tried to load the deck. I made Simon give very quick picks on the main and co-main. And I was going to say he thought Sean O'Malley was going to dominate Merab Dvalishvili. So I was going to use that as my defense, sort of throw Simon under the bus, throw him in front of the wheels as you came racing towards me and leap out of the way.
Sweet. I'm 100% down with this kind of underhanded, traitorous behavior.
You didn't give me the chance because you were very gracious in our main event discussion. But anyway, yeah, Simon and I did talk about this, Lopes versus Ortega, and being a heavy hands listener, I did warn him, like, he thinks we're right. He fell into the I don't think Diego Lopes is very good trap. And I'm like, look, I agree, but also you have to reckon with the fact that this is the Drekas era. We aside from the fact that you and I are just frequently wrong about so many of our picks, the fact that he was agreeing did make me nervous. I voiced that. And I was right to be nervous because this, in fact, looked like a fight where Brian Ortega was just very old. And a couple other things I think that maybe we should have seen coming despite that, but it was really a very one-sided win for Diego Lopes.
Yeah, shockingly so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I think the looking old thing was definitely real. I think, so, a lot of our main takeaways were just like the whole Brian Ortega is the better version of Diego Lopes. And I think that's true. He is just like a broadly more skilled version of Diego Lopes. He's a better wrestler. He's probably got better hands in most of the ways that matter. And so, we just went for the pick the OG thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because Diego Lopes increasingly does look like an IQ test. He's a very physically challenging IQ test, but Brian Ortega is someone that I trust to beat fighters like that because he's shown that he has both like the durability, and the physicality and the like courage and the, to be honest, the intelligence to make, to go for the right game plan.
Yeah. He certainly showed those qualities.
Rodriguez, for example.
Exactly. Yeah. He certainly showed all those qualities in that fight, which was very recent. So it made sense to have that in mind, I think.
But yeah, so I totally trusted him with this kind of stuff. One thing that we completely discounted about who these two guys are. They are sort of the same guy, or like Brian Ortega was the Diego Lopes, unstructured, violent guy with a submission game kind of thing. Brian Ortega is a slow starter. Diego Lopes is a fast starter.
Yes.
That is the one thing that I think we didn't necessarily take account of. But to be honest, even if I had, I don't think I would have picked Diego Lopes.
I would have expected Ortega to have to weather some kind of storm, which he did here. And, despite the fact that he got hurt really bad immediately, he did show his powers of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
But, you were saying.
But also, I felt like this fight also kind of reminded me of, and, going to your old thing, it kind of reminded me of Ortega's own fight with Chan Sung Jung, where Ortega hurt him really early, and I just got, for the rest of the fight, I just got the impression that he was on autopilot.
Yeah.
That he wasn't actually, thinking at all about what was happening. That he was just sort of going through the motions, and it contributed towards making it like a much more one-sided fight than it otherwise might have been.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I think
he had just never fully recovered.
Physically, he largely recovered, but he was shell-shocked after that. He was not responding very well to anything. He couldn't really make any significant adjustments. I think it might also be an age thing that, like, I would have expected based on that Yair Rodriguez fight, Ortega to just fucking go for it, which his corner was asking for. You know, like, okay, you are going to get hit. Like, whatever. Just go in there, make a clinch happen, wrestle him, force him to grapple with you, something. And I didn't feel he was quite capable of doing that. He just ran into that counter right hand so many times, throwing these like mechanical jabs. I mean, as another thing we didn't really hit on.
That was the thing, is that, like, I also felt that, like, Ortega could have... I did feel at other times that, like, Ortega was trying to read steps ahead where he didn't actually need to. Because with regards to that jab, I felt like most of the time he just could have continued throwing it.
Yes, 100%.
It was when he tried to follow up with something else. And I think, again, like, this was part of being hurt, is that he was trying to, like, get it back and, like, insert himself into the fight.
Yeah.
But he could have done that just by, you know, endlessly jabbing to Lopes.
I 100% agree with that.
Absolutely no reaction to it. It was when he stepped in to follow it up is that Lopes would every single time, like, slip back to the right and throw a big right hand.
Yeah, this was like an ass backwards version of something you see happen in a lot of fights in both MMA and boxing. Like, if your jab is non-threatening, then whatever you're trying to use it to set up is going to be much, much easier for the opponent to read and respond to, right? And you see this a lot. In MMA, the opponent just reaches a point very quickly where they can just look past the jab. They know it's a setup.
Yep.
You get this with like Michael Johnson's jab, for example. If somebody gets a good read on that, they can just look past it and just worry about the stuff he's trying to put behind it. And the jab is a non-issue.
Darren Till.
Yeah.
He talks about that with when we rewatched his fight with Dricus.
Yeah, that the jab is absolutely. Even Dricus can just sort of get a defensive read on it because the jab is fake. You don't have to respect it. So whatever. It's just noise. You tune it out. This had that effect, except instead of the jab being non-threatening, it was actually just landing. Like, Diego Lopes was ignoring it while it was connecting. But Brian Ortega didn't recognize that was a path to victory in and of itself. Just keep landing the jab. Because it was, when he would go past it, that's when he would eat the counter right hand, because his positioning was terrible. We didn't really talk about this, but this was a factor as well. Ortega, in his best striking performance against Chan Sung Jung, that was a back foot performance that was all about the jab. Ortega trying to make exchanges happen, he is not nearly... the moment you go past that jab and he's trying to be like a come forward striker, he's still where he was when he fought Max Holloway, you know, like, he just is like stumbling, bumbling, square into the pocket, chin up. And this started right at the beginning. I mean, he tried like a double jab set up for a right hand. That was what got him hurt right at the beginning of the fight. And it's like, you haven't earned that. And also, you didn't need it. Just land the jab. And it was landing all throughout the fight.
Lopes has a Shane Burgos-esque tendency to just bang his face directly where you can just jab it forever.
And if you're the kind of fighter who could be just satisfied with a jab landing, you could just outstrike Lopes going any direction, I think. He needs something bigger than that.
Again, this is exactly why, like, I don't think I could have been dissuaded from picking Brian Ortega.
Yeah.
Because I would have just been like, Brian Ortega's brain and his body will have to break down for him to not win this fight. Because I know that he can win a fight moving backwards off his jab. He's done it before. I know that he can game plan for specific opponents. He's done it before. So yeah, this was like somewhat of a shocker. And yeah, I think for me, my personal explanation is that it's like the Chan Sung Jung fight. He just wasn't there after that first knockdown.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that was part of it. Yeah, he should have just kept landing that jab. You can win a fight with your jab, man.
Mm-hmm. He has.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He just, I think it was also, it was definitely part of the thing that he was in a huge hole right from the start. Certainly must have affected the way he fought. I mean, even I was saying, like, clearly he needs to pressure, but I was saying that with the sort of misunderstanding that he could pressure without continually putting himself at risk, and he couldn't. Lopes was throwing the same counters and they were landing every time.
Yeah. He's, I can respect that it was, that is the flip side of being Brian Ortega, who Brian Ortega was, comeback machine, is that he was one of those rare guys who was able to throw caution to the wind and really go for it.
Right.
And when you're, half conscious in a horrifically violent fight, you don't necessarily know when it's, you probably don't even know what time of the fight it is. You don't know what round it is.
Yeah, right.
You don't know when it's time to just be, sit there on your jab and just rack up points. And you don't know when it's the time that you need to, you need to go after him. You need to finish Renato Moicano or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You need to just, or Clay Guida or whoever, any of the other guys that he's come back on over the years. This was not the time for a comeback. This was a time to just settle in. But, again, that's an instinctive thing which killed him as much as anything else.
I will say, to give a little more credit to Diego Lopes, one thing that would have complicated that approach, which Ortega was incapable of adjusting to, were Lopez's low kicks.
Low kicks? Yeah.
They were very effective. I think that was a further incentive for Ortega to step in and make exchanges happen. Still, I think he got himself into an ever deeper hole by just insisting on wading in without really seeming able to read where the openings were or where the counters were coming from. He was just not present in the exchanges. Okay. Well, let's talk about the fight that came before this very quickly, and then we'll wrap up. This was an absolute banger. Certainly an eye-opener for me regarding Esteban Ribovic. He fought Daniel Zellhuber. And as I said multiple times earlier in the show, a fight of the year contender, and the third round of this fight was, in my mind, the front runner for round of the year so far. Because it was absolutely bananas. But, what did you take away from this one?
Yeah, this was just an incredible action fight right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Just both guys working in, both guys using combinations, mixing up the targets. Genuinely pretty good boxing. Mm-hmm. At least offensively speaking. It reminded me of Lawler Hendricks in the best way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not really much to say other than that. It was just an incredible fight.
Esteban Ribovic is another one on my growing list of guys coached by Henry Hooft that I'm very impressed by. He is at least part-time what is it now? Is it Kill Cliff now?
Yeah, whatever Team Evil's called, yeah.
So more good work in the boxing and kickboxing department, I would say, from Henry Hooft and whoever else he has working there, coaching with him. Daniel Zellhuber, this was a fight that was a long time coming for him. Because for as long as he's been in the UFC, and I did peg him pretty early on as somebody with some serious potential. But for that entire time, he has been a fighter who he doesn't just start slow, he starts unequipped. There's a lot of good boxing shit that Daniel Zellhuber can do. He has a very good jab, he can pivot, he can defend and counter. But you will not see this whole game clicking, all of these parts working consistently and working together until the third round. And this was a fight where it really did have the look of a fight where Zellhuber was going to come back to win the third.
Mm-hmm.
But because he had such a slow start and was just, eating body shots and getting countered every time he threw his damn left hook, and Rubovic would throw a right hand left hook and come after him. He put himself in such a hole that even though he did start the third round looking definitely the best he had in the entire fight and did deliver a knockdown, actually came out of the defensive shell with an elbow after Rubovic chased him and punished him for lunging in. The fact that Rubovic just stormed back at him meant that, of course, Zellhuber's going to lose. I think this was a split decision. I felt like sort of, philosophically, I guess, this was a fight that, Zellhuber should have lost. Because you can't create those thin margins for yourself to win and then not win the third round. Pretty clearly, in my opinion, because even though he did drop Rubovic, Zellhuber was hurt a lot more and for much longer.
Yeah. I've heard people argue that it was a 10-8 for Rubovic.
Yeah, it certainly could be. It's hard to say that when you got knocked down yourself, but
I think that is some kind of recency bias. That is a little like Lawler Condit in the last round.
Right.
Remember the last minute of that round.
Right. But Zellhuber put himself in that position. I would really like for this to be a learning experience for him. Because if he would come out there turning around the opponent, sticking and moving, and also finding some pressure, which he usually does once he gets his jab going, because that he can make that reach a real proactive problem for the opponent. Until he starts doing that earlier in the fight, he doesn't even have to be aggressive. I think that's the problem. He is aggressive early. He's just aggressive in a completely disorganized way. And then he has to remember how to box over the course of the fight. It's he needs to learn from this, because I'm not saying everyone can fight like Rubovic did. In fact, I think very few fighters can. Putting together that many combinations, mixing in the body work.
This was,
and
taking a little John Lineker.
Yeah, exactly. Just taking the shots.
What it reminded me of.
Storming back. Not everyone can do that, but still, Zellhuber very much put himself in the position to lose that third round. Rubovic is, he's the truth though. He is, I think, definitely a striker to watch. He is not just a dumb brute, but he can also be, like John Lineker, crazy, aggressive, absolutely going for the kill. I thought this was a really, pretty comprehensive kind of boxer-puncher performance from him.
Yeah.
So, good shit.
Yeah, I mean, just genuinely incredibly thrilling. Sort of start to end, as you said, that last round, you can't imagine that Zellhuber's going to survive it, even after he knocks Rubovic down. It's a whole fight in a single round.
Yep.
It's a better single round than,
the entirety of the main event and co-main event combined.
Many fights before, a certain point in MMA history, basically.
Yeah, really. It is. And it was also, that single round was better than the totality of Dvalishvili, O'Malley, and Shevchenko, Grasso, both combined. 50 minutes of MMA action did not compare to those 5 minutes of absolute war between Rubovic and Zellhuber. So, that's what we want to see, anything else on this card that caught your attention before we close out?
Not really.
Yeah, there's some other stuff to talk about. It'll certainly come up on the Vivisection bonus next week. If any of you out there subscribe to that, Zaina and I will recap probably most of the card in brief. While I'm plugging,
Van was predictably extremely fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ignacio Bahamondes, fraud checking. Some people said Manuel Torres. I thought was just sort of a worse version of a fighter like Ignacio Bahamondes. That was me and Zane's call, and I was glad to see that proven. Bahamondes is just kind of like Zellhuber, guy who does not use his reach as well as he should, except that instead of proving that he knows how later in the fight, Bahamondes is just a brawler the whole damn time, and he's a ton of fun. While I'm plugging other things, I will mention that I'm going to have a little piece, I think, on Sean O'Malley, probably questioning what the hell he was thinking, coming out of my Substack. But before that is published, you can go check out a free-to-read article addressing the debate, which has raged on Twitter, continually stirred by Miguel Class, on whether pivots work in MMA.
No.
Well, you may find that my take is different. So if
they low kick you.
Read the article, Phil. Facepunching.substack.com. The article is titled, "Yes, Pivots Work in MMA." Immediately addressing your concerns with the title. Speaking of Miguel, he and I are going to be doing an episode of Heavy Henka not too much later this month, after this week. The sumo tournament is already halfway through. Somehow we missed doing our mid-tournament recap episode, but we are still going to talk about some sumo over on the Heavy Hands Patreon. And yeah, that's it for the show. Find Phil and I on Twitter at EvilGregJackson, at BoxingBush. We appreciate your support on the Patreon. I appreciate your support on my Substack. And until next week, when we will be looking forward to Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis on top of an okay fight night card. I've seen worse. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.
So, Chandler was saying, why didn't Arman fight for the belt when he had the opportunity? He was like, I don't understand why he didn't that fight. I would have taken it. Man, this sport moves fast. Sport moves very fast. June 1st, you're going to see that lightweight title happen. Then a couple of weeks later, you're going to see Chandler versus McGregor. A fight that's way bigger than that happen. And both guys can make lightweight. The sport moves fast. You've got to take your opportunities, and you've got to pounce on them. And then Arman said, I don't expect you to understand, Michael Chandler. We are not on the same level. I am here to be the champ. You are just waiting for a paycheck. I also don't understand why you waited for Conor fight for 2 years. You could have lost 4 exciting fights during that time. It was one of the coldest burns I think I've ever heard in this sport.
That's really good.
It's just so perfectly accurate.
Oh, man.